Okay, as soon as you see the red light,
Yep.
it should be.
It says live.
Yep.
So good evening and welcome to the Joint Committee on Judicial Retention. It is March 10th and it is just about 8 minutes after 6. We are here for a public hearing this evening, we have not received any requests from anyone to join us in this public hearing, nor have we received any questions. And so I would like to just turn the meeting over to our committee assistant, Peggy Delaney, and to let us know what we have done in order to get this hearing underway or to warn this hearing. Peggy? Okay,
can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I would say that what we have put the schedule on everything that we've gone over so far, we've put on the Judicial Retention website, which included the schedule early on that said that we were having a public hearing or looking for public input. It was on the agenda saying today that we were getting public input, looking for public input from the judges. We sent out a press release 2 weeks ago to the outlets that we have always sent press releases out to. I can read them out to you right now. Associated Press of Vermont, Bennington Banner, BNA, Bradford Journal, Brandon Pittsford Reporter, Caledonia Record, Colchester Sun, Essex Reporter, Fox 44 News, Herald of Randolph, Heinsberg Record, Manchester Journal, Milton Independent, Mountain Times, Newport Daily Express, News and Citizen, Olga Peters, WKVT, Out in the Mountains, Prime Time Journal, Rutland Herald, 7 Days, Springfield Reporter, Stowe Reporter, The Chronicle, The Islander, The Northfield News, The Valley Reporter, The World, Times Argus, Valley News, Vermont Digger, Vermont Journal, Vermont Maturity, Vermont Public Radio, Vermont Digger, Waterbury Record, WCAX TV, WDEV, White River Junction Valley News, Williston Observer, WKVT Brattleboro, WNNE, WPTZ, WVMT. And we also put it on the General Assembly website under announcements, although I will say it did not go on there till yesterday.
I announced it yesterday at our caucus, and I announced it today on the floor of the House as well. Senator Nick, does that cover what you were thinking of?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Peggy.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Peggy.
No problem.
So at this point, I'm not sure how to proceed at this point. So we have no inquiries from the public regarding the judges that we sat and spoke with earlier about a week or two ago. So Eric, do you have any suggestions as to?
Well, in the past, when we've been here physically, typically what is done is, and it has happened on several occasions that when the 6 o'clock time comes to begin the public hearing, there's nobody here. So you ordinarily have held it open for some period of time. I'm trying to remember, I think it was an hour, and folks would kind of go do their work for an hour, and we all would do that. But it's sort of easier when we're all here. Maybe it's easier when we're not here. I guess it depends on how you look at it. In any event, I think that's past practice, that if no one turns up, because I think, if I remember right, the hearing is supposed to go on for at least 2 hours, assuming there were enough people here to fill it up. Without people, if nobody turned up by 7, you adjourned. That's if I remember correctly.
I recall that at one point, although I think since I've been doing this, someone has actually shown up each time, although we have waited. Senator
Right.
Nick.
So I think in the notice, I think I saw someplace that if no one was coming to give any testimony, that we would only hold the hearing open until a certain time. And I don't have the notice in front of me.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
The other thing was, in the past, since the judges would always be there. We would sometimes have a little bit of a round robin talking about, ways that we could maybe improve this, or just some other issues that the judges wanted to make us aware of, just some short kind of informal chat. If nobody comes and we have to be here till 7, they certainly don't have to stay till 7, but
Sure.
that would be a thought to think about that. That's
Sure.
all.
I think that that would be a good idea. So Judge Grierson, is there anything that has been related to you from any of the other judges, or any issues that you think should come before this committee at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Brian Grierson, Chief Superior Judge. Not that come to mind. I believe that Bob Paolini forwarded a proposed plan for one of the folks that are up for retention. And so if the committee decides, in the absence of any witnesses, to proceed in that direction tonight, we're also scheduled for tomorrow night on that.
Yes.
I think you'll find that we're ready to proceed on that, or answer any questions you have about the proposed plan. But I don't have any general issues. I did have a chance to speak with Senator Hardy earlier in the week about some of the issues that were raised in the earlier hearing with me. And I did talk with her also about the remedial efforts we had put into play a couple of years ago. I think Senator McCormick also asked about that, and I can certainly fill in the committee as to the steps we took in those matters, if that's of interest to the committee. And I'm glad to answer any questions that may have that the committee may have about the process, or any broader questions.
So I think it may be appropriate with a few new members that we do review some of the remediation that we undertook in the last few years. If you would be willing to share that with some of these folks, Judge Grierson.
Sure. Each of the plans that we have, excuse me, put into play usually involve different components, and they're tailored to the issues that are identified either through the surveys or through questions by the committee. And the members that were involved in the committee, I think it was 2 years ago, there were 2 judges that were subject to a so-called remedial plan. And in one of those, in both cases, I did send them to, I didn't, the judiciary did. Let me just get the name of the, both judges, that was Judges Hoare and Tomasi, went to a program sponsored and put on by the National Judicial College. For those newer members who may not be familiar with it, the National Judicial College is located in Reno, Nevada. And all judges are sent to what is a basic judicial program. Judges from all over the country are sent there for a 2-week, I'll call it an introductory program, but what we have found and what we do as a practice with the judiciary members, newly appointed members, is generally speaking, we'll have them have a year, approximately a year on the bench, because we found in going to that course, for instance, that a judge, an individual, really needs to have a frame of reference in order to benefit from the program. In other words, if they've never sat as a judge, they're just not going to pick up anywhere near as much as they do. So that's a basic program. But the college, apart from this, what we call a general jurisdiction program, because it covers a very broad range of subjects, they also have specific programs, sometimes relating to specific subjects, maybe evidence, maybe electronic media, it may be domestic violence, so targeted issues. And in this case, the program that I identified for those judges was called Enhancing Judicial Bench Skills. They both presented with issues that year that the committee was concerned about, but they were different issues. But I thought this program addressed at least part of those issues, and by that, it was in part the way they related to litigants and attorneys in the court. So I thought it was appropriate. In addition to that course, I had both individuals monitored by different judges. I use or look to retired judges to perform that function. And in the case of one judge who at the time the retention hearings were over, was assigned to Rutland Court, and I had a retired judge from the southern part of the state observing him. And the observation consists of not only going into court to observe him, but also meeting with the judge and have them having a one-on-one discussion about the observations by the judge, and an opportunity to, if you will, debrief. And then the retired judge also reports to me on their observations and comments. When that judge's assignment changed in September of that year, and that's normally when assignments change, he had reassigned, if you will, to the Chittenden Court. And because that some of those issues were involved relationships, if you will, interaction with staff, and there were issues relating to interaction with female members of the staff. I also then switched over and had a retired female judge. Many of you know her, Judge Davenport, was involved in observation during that time period. And I will tell you that from neither judge did I receive any adverse reports about the judge's conduct in the hearings that they observed or their interaction with him. Certainly none of the nature that prompted the concern of the committee members and the issues that were discussed during that time. I have not heard complaints of that nature in the time since then. I frequently will hear from any number of reporters. It could be, sometimes it's a member of the legislature who will contact me about reports or information they've received from constituents. Sometimes attorneys contact my office directly. And on occasion, I have communication with self-represented litigants. So from my perspective, I think the observation, the other judge also went under an observation period with a different judge because he was located in a different area. But I thought both those programs that had been approved by the committee were effective. And the judges I chose for that, I chose for specific reasons. One judge was chosen from the southern part of the state because he had never had retired before the judge under observation, Judge Hoare, had actually been assigned to the bench. So it was someone that he did not know and wasn't necessarily comfortable with. And I thought that was important. And I also felt that having a female judge observe him in court and his interaction with both attorneys and litigants. And these judges also reached out to some of the attorneys that appeared before these judges to get their reaction to working in the court with Judge Hoare, and the reports that they received were favorable. There was one report, it wasn't unfavorable. They just thought that the judge was being perhaps a little too informal with both parties. It was one of these cases where it was resolved in the courtroom and the parties were on a good, if you will, friendly basis, and the judge also engaged in a banter that wasn't offensive, but whether or not it was necessary, I guess, would be one way of looking at it. But there were no adverse reports of the kind that raise the concern of the committee.
Thank you, Judge. If I may, Senator Hardy, now you had some, as I recall, some interest in feedback such as this regarding what we had asked the judges to do. Do you have any questions for Judge Grierson, or has what he told us at this point satisfied some of the interest that you had?
Yeah, thank you, Representative Troiano. And as Judge Grierson said, he and I spoke this past Monday about this. And so he and I had a lot lengthier conversation. And while I continue to have concerns about Judge Hoare, I feel like the proposal, and as you know, I voted against his retention. But as Judge Grierson reported, I feel comfortable with the process and the oversight that he initiated following our retention hearings. So I appreciated, I had a good conversation with Judge Grierson about this and several other issues. So thank you for asking.
Good, thank you. Yes. Let's see. Representative Coburn.
Yeah, I feel like I just have to say, and I'm not trying to really dispute the process or that it works or that the plan that was put in place for, I'm not trying to call that in question, but I do feel like I just need to say that I have continued to hear concerns about one of these judges and did actually reach out at one point to Judge Grierson about particular interaction that I heard some concerns about, and just, I don't know, I just felt like I should state that on the record because it was maybe a little different from what you just heard, but I'm not saying that to call the plan into question, just to note that issues do persist in some of these instances, I think.
Okay.
And I certainly recall speaking with Representative Coburn. I didn't recall it in terms of with one of the judges that we've just discussed, but I recall that probably on more than one occasion, for different reasons, we've communicated about judge-related issues. So if it was about one of those judges, I obviously forgot that. But
Yeah,
no
worries.
Yeah, when that information comes to me, what I try to do, just so the committee understands, it's certainly not something that I brush off. What I attempt to do oftentimes particularly when I hear reports about the judge's behavior or conduct in a courtroom, I will try to go back to the actual hearing tapes and listen to them myself. And by the time something gets reported to me and it's relayed, for instance, to Representative Coburn, you're sometimes hearing, by the time it gets to me, it's second, third hand. And so I try to go back to the hearings, listen to them, and I don't recall the specifics of Representative Coburn's complaint, but had the record borne out those concerns, I certainly would have addressed him with the judge, because he would expect to come back before you folks again. And I make all judges aware of that. This is a continuing review.
So I received an email from Peggy, which informed me that there is a remediation plan for one of our judges in this present
Yes.
rotation. And she wanted to know if we should post it. And I asked her to wait until we spoke about it as a committee before we did anything such as that. So, but again, that's a conversation to be had amongst the committee without all of the other judges present. So I guess my question now is there anyone else on the committee who would like to have any conversation or ask any more questions or
Representative Shaw has his hand up.
Oh, he does. Oh, sorry, Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Representative Troiano. I have a question for Senator Hardy.
Okay.
So, Senator, I listened to your comments as we're going through and your give and take with Judge Grierson and talking about remediation plans and the effectiveness of them. And I know that you have, and we all may have some questions about a current person that we're looking at. What's your personal opinion on the remediation plans? Are they generally successful, or are they, or I don't know how to characterize it. So just being, this is my, I'm not going to pull a freshman card here, but I just want to pick your brain a little bit to see, get your opinion on those.
Oh, well, thank you, Representative Shaw, for asking me. I think it's always great to pull the freshman card. I did it all the time last session. When you're new, you can ask all the good questions.
Right.
But I have a limited experience with these types of things. This is my third year on the committee, but we did have two judges that had plans, as Judge Grierson said. And one of my concerns about them was that, you know, we approve a judge and then the judge is a judge for another 6 years and we don't have another crack at it for 6 years. And that was my concern when we put these plans in place. And for one of those judges, I didn't think he should be retained and I voted against him. So I was particularly concerned about that judge. I think there's no guarantee once we approve somebody that they're going to do well. Although from my colleagues, I've heard that there are judges that have had these plans in place. They've come back for their next retention hearing and they've been great and they learned a lot and the plans worked really well. And so I think that there's certainly a track record of them having worked well. And based on what I heard from Judge Grierson on Monday in greater detail, but also again today, I feel comfortable with the process he used for these plans. Whether or not all judges and all problems can be solved with them, I think the answer is probably no. But I also think that they, in general, can be effective. I think mentoring and observation and training and really just getting a better self-awareness of yourself as a professional, whether it's a judge or a legislator or a teacher or whatever you are, is always really helpful. So I don't know if that answers your question. I would say I don't have 100% confidence in them, but I think that, and I think for some people they're not going to ever work, but for many judges they have, I think, worked.
So I think one of my thoughts, personal thoughts, is we have an investment in these people, and we've entrusted them with a very special job to do for the citizens of Vermont. And I just, especially a younger judge without a whole lot of experience, this could be a defining moment in their career. And if we can teach them to be a really good magistrate or judge or whatever position they have, I think it's a win for us as a state. And so I'm just trying to learn all I can about these mediation plans and make sure that we're doing the right things with those. So thank you for your thoughts.
Senator Nicker.
So I just want to say, we do have new people on the committee, and someone, I don't know if it was Ruth, mentioned the 6 years in between reviews. And that's came up for some years in a row. As I always thought of it that an oil change was needed, and the Bar Association stepped up to this, and we might hear if this is okay with you, Mr. Chair, to have Terry Corsones from the Bar Association speak to what is in place now with regard to a 3-year interim review that's not our review, but a review. And so if that would be okay, maybe
Absolutely.
speak to that.
Absolutely. Terry Corsones. Yes, there you are.
Sure. Hi.
Well,
Hi.
good evening.
Hi, how are you all? And I'd be happy to briefly summarize the process that we did put in place in response to this very concerned Senator Hart, a 6-year period without really any opportunity for input or feedback for the judges. So Judge Grierson and I worked up a memorandum of understanding that outlines the process where, in essence, at a mid-cycle point, either 3 years after a judge has first been appointed to the bench or 3 years after the last time they went through the retention cycle, the judiciary provides us a list of names and email addresses for any attorney who has appeared before that judicial officer during the previous 3 years. And we have survey questions that are similar to the survey questions that go out during the retention process, but some a little bit different. And I think, Senator Hardy, we had provided you with a copy of them, but they're designed to give a broad overview of performance on many different levels. And we have gone through the mid-cycle process twice now. And each time, I believe, Judge Grierson can correct me, I think we had, I'm going to say 6 to 8 judges who were at the mid-cycle spot. And I was happily surprised with the responses because each judicial officer who's been in the process had between 30 to 50 responses, and probably the average was closer to 45 to 50 survey responses. And it is my understanding, just anecdotally from judges who've been in the cycle, because I asked them, was it helpful to you? They indicated that it was. The survey not only has kind of the grading option, but also the opportunity for comments, written comments, similar to your survey questions. So far, anyway, it appears to be working well and appreciated, and it's set up to go out once a year, basically coinciding with the time of the new assignments. And so we're happy to continue that process, and so far it seems to be working fine, and hopefully is, and Judge Grierson may have more information from the judges. I, excuse me, remember asking one each time, did you get them okay? We do check with the judges as to how they want their survey responses sent to them, whether via email or in the mail or whatever. So I have spoken with a couple of them, and they both thought it was really helpful, or said it was really helpful for them. Again, Judge Grierson may have more information from the judges themselves, but that's an overview of the process that was implemented in response to your request for something more often than every 6 years.
Very good. Thank you, Terry.
Mr. Chair, if you want me to respond, I think the judges have welcomed this opportunity. As Senator Nitka says, we've been talking about this for a long time. Almost every retention year, the topic comes up. The issue has always been the confidentiality, the need for confidentiality in these interim surveys. It's a voluntary decision on the part of a judge to either participate or not participate, and the results can be retained by them. They don't have to disclose them if they don't want to. And I think that's what makes it effective in terms of they understand what is being said about them, and they would have to respond to those surveys. But I will say that the judges, I've not heard any judge object to the process. Whether or not they avail themselves of it, they know that it's there, and I think it's been good. There was a long time ago when the VBA did this, and I was involved fairly early on in my time on the bench, maybe less than 2 years. I found it helpful even then, but then it was a significant cost factor that prevented us from doing it for years and years. And now, between the memorandum of understanding we've executed with the VBA, we've come to an understanding of how it can be used, and I think it's good and it's been effective.
There were two changes that I recall, although I haven't been here 6 years, but that it had been discussed that first retention went under a remediation plan, and they came back for their next retention as all-stars.
I think over the course of time, even before my time, these remedial plans have certainly proven to be effective. I would agree with Senator Hardy. I mean, you hope that let me put it this way, it's not just the remedial plan if they're successful, it's the experience of going through this retention process combined with a remedial plan that hopefully will, hone in on those issues that have been identified. And the real proof, as they say, will come 6 years from then, as to whether or not they have truly learned. But I think over the years, these plans, and as I said, they take different forms depending on the issues and the individual, have proven to be effective.
Thank you, Judge. Senator Hardy.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask Terry or maybe Judge Grierson, I'm so excited and happy that you all were able to figure out a way to make this happen, because it does relieve a lot of the concerns I had 2 years ago when this wasn't in place. And I know there was a lot of concern about these being confidential. But one of the benefits of doing these sort of midterm reviews is to be able to really discuss the results with somebody. And I know that that's up to the judge, and I understand why, but I'm wondering, have either of you worked with judges who've reached out and said, I got my review, I want to discuss it, I want to put something in place to make sure in 3 years I don't have a bad retention review?
Some have shared the results with me and some have chosen not to. And obviously I'll work with some. I guess I'd leave it like that. Some have shared them and some have not.
It just seems like being proactive and saying, oh, I think I might need this training from the Judicial College would be helpful for them to do before coming back to us.
And I would hope that they would take advantage of that, because we do offer and have offered individual sessions for judges where sometimes we identify problems separate and apart from retention, where we think matters need to be addressed. And there are times when we have found courses through the National Judicial College or otherwise and sent individuals there. So I wouldn't want the committee to think that we just react every 6 years with an individual. We do respond to complaints and try to address those issues. And any judges will tell you when I've gone to them, I will tell them, I start my dialogue with them by saying, this is the kind of behavior that will be reflected in a survey and a retention. This is why you have to address this issue, because this will not go away unless you change it. So I remind them of that periodically.
It's good. I think just being proactive, I hope they're all proactive. We all should be.
Senator Nika.
So Chip, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, since we have the judges here and we still have some time before 7, if we might, if it's an agreement with you and the group, to maybe hear briefly from each one of them just on whatever they might choose to talk about. But, the process would probably be a good one.
Yep, that's where I was headed next, Senator. Thank you. So let's see. Everyone has a different screen. So who shows up first on my screen here is Judge Waples. Is there anything that you would like to address the committee on at this point in time regarding some of the conversation that has just taken place? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, good evening. I'm just trying to there we are. Hello, good evening to everyone. And it's a pleasure to be back. So thank you very much for the invitation. I find it extraordinarily enlightening listening to all of you. And I think oftentimes as judges, our roles are somewhat removed in terms of the nature of the job. And I think that this process is wonderful in making sure that we always have a connection to the people we serve. And I don't think there's a better conduit than the Judiciary Committee to remind us of all the things that we need to keep in mind when we are judging and doing our jobs. And especially, and of course, the VBA is an extraordinary resource for all the judges to keep tabs on what's important to all those who are the stakeholders in the judiciary. I will comment, though, that I know that there had been a process where judges would get the reviews or however that was to be disseminated to judges up for retention in terms of any comments. I did not get any during my regarding myself. I just assume that may have been because of the pandemic and just because of logistic issues. So I welcome that process. I think that it would be extraordinarily beneficial for every judge, but particularly a judge who's going through retention for the first time like I was. I was looking forward to at least having some of those comments and getting a sense. And I understand that whatever happened and that wasn't disseminated to the judges. Maybe some of them got them. I did not. But I do think it is a wonderful a procedure to assist the judges in what they should be doing right and what they could do to improve their jobs to serve Vermonters.
Very good. Thank you, Judge Waples.
You're welcome.
Judge Lorman, is there something that you would like? Hold that thought for a second. Senator Benny.
Thank you, Chair Troiano. I just want to make clear for my benefit, we were scheduled to come back tomorrow night, as were the judges, for follow-up. I wasn't prepared with at least my screen. I'm sure I can eventually find the notes on each judge if I needed to, but are we doing this right now in lieu of tomorrow night, or are we planning to come back tomorrow anyway?
Well, it was my plan to discuss this further with the committee. We haven't in the past called every judge back for a second time, as I recall. There does seem to be at least one judge that we probably would like to speak with again from my notes. So I thought that shortly, if we adjourn at 7, shortly thereafter, we can take up some of these logistical issues, if that's okay with everyone.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm prepared and they are prepared, because I'm not sure that they were expecting to have a follow-up this evening that was the last follow-up, so to speak. Yes,
but that's not where I think we're going with this. I think we're just having a basic conversation. And I think a second callback for a judge is to discuss specific issues that came up in the initial interview.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Senator Hardy.
Thanks. Can I just ask Judge Waples a clarifying question? Just
Sure.
to make sure I understand. Judge, did you not receive the survey results? Is that what you're?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up, Senator, because I thought about it afterwards. I didn't want to confuse anyone or to make it appear as if I did not receive the survey results. I received the survey results that I assume you all received in terms of the our first meeting and the requests from the attorneys, the request in terms of the attorneys as well as the non-attorneys, people who are the other stakeholders. My understanding of the conversation, and obviously Judge Grierson had talked about this before, and I think it has occurred in the past, is that prior to retention, questionnaires would be sent out earlier rather than within the 18 months prior to your time for retention, that you could get a sense maybe after a couple of years, how you were doing on the bench. And that's what I was referring to. And I may have misunderstood that. Perhaps it has always just been the questionnaire sent out 18 months before your retention hearing. But
Okay.
I thought that there were some situations where, or there, at least there was some conversation with the VBA that perhaps the questionnaires could be sent out earlier and across the board, maybe a more expansive group so that the judges would have a better sense of how they were doing.
Okay, and that's the process we were just talking about with Ms. Corsones and Judge Grierson, is that it's a pretty new process, that it's an interim every 3-year process.
Right.
So I think you probably just missed it because it just started, and that's unfortunate, but hopefully in 3 years from now, you'll get that.
Good, I'll look forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Representative Shaw, did you have something that you wanted to say? No,
I'm fine.
Thank you. On, right? Okay. So, Judge Lorman, is there something that you would like to address the committee with, or have anything to say? This is outside of any time that, or a second appearance before the committee to discuss some of the issues that had come up in your initial interview. So this is just kind of an offhand comments or questions that you may have for folks on the committee. Is there something you would like to tell us at this point? And
thank you.
Hearing.
Thank you, Chair Triano. I, to be honest, wasn't planning on doing that tonight, and I guess I don't have anything, didn't have anything chambered exactly, but after having heard the conversation about the midterm surveys that we heard Judge Grierson and Ms. Corsones talk about, I can certainly tell you from my perspective that I would be very interested in participating in that. I wish that I had those midterm surveys before maybe I came to this session. So I can tell you that if in the future that is made available to me, I will gladly participate in them.
Okay, great. Thank you, Judge. I didn't mean to put you on the spot with anything. It was just, this is just kind of a random thing here.
Not at all. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Judge Hoyt, is there something that you would like to discuss with the committee at this point? Welcome.
Good evening.
Yes, welcome.
I observed during this process how seriously this committee takes its responsibility in the retention process. And I would like to thank you for that. I heard that you read the materials, and I'm not suggesting that I didn't. You would read the materials, but you read them thoroughly, such that you could ask questions about them, even read the decisions. And I just wanted to thank you for that. So that's my observation.
Very good. Thank you, Judge. So let's see, no other judges. So Senator McCormick, Representative Knott, any things that are in your mind that you would like to discuss with the committee at this point?
I'm good. I came really this evening expecting to listen to other people. So.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm in the same boat too. I
okay.
Came with a pen and a blank notebook to take notes as needed, but I didn't really prepare for anything other than to listen to comments.
Okay, that's great. So not to feel left out, we should ask Bob Paolini maybe if he has anything that he would share with the committee at this point. Again, not to put you on the spot, but I'm sorry, Senator Nick.
I just wanted to say, I'm not sure if you can see this, but I see that Judge Valentine is on the screen in place of Judge Grierson.
Yes. And I don't know why it's indicating that I'm Judge Grierson. But I just wanted to let you know that I've been here throughout the process, and I'm happy to also address the 3-year review by the Bar Association, which I would wholeheartedly endorse. Going 6 years, especially when you're a new judge, is simply too long. And this process has been eye-opening. It's been humbling. I've learned a lot. and more opportunities would be welcome.
Very good.
Magistrate, you're now on notice that the court administrator's office has hacked into yours.
I was going to say, now this is the second time you've appeared under some sort of a different name, Judge. I don't know what.
I would just like to add that if he can continue to use my name as long as he follows through on what goes with it.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So that's it, Judge?
That's it.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Yes. So we can go to Bob Paolini at this point. Are you on a different name or are you here?
No, it's my name. I'm glad I'm glad there are not two Brian Griersons. I think we should all be happy about that. Thank you for recognizing me. I appreciate this conversation. I think it's a good one to have. I mean, some of you have been through this a number of times, but for the new folks on the committee, I think it's important to have the conversation. And I'm glad all the judges were here. And thank you for reaching out to them and using this time to get their input. Other than that, I have nothing else to add at this point. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Bob. So Peggy, have we had anyone requesting to enter into this public hearing?
No, we have not.
We have not. It's 5 minutes to 7. So Senator Hardy, is that a hand up?
Yeah, I'm
okay.
Sorry. Just one other. Well, I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought by waving at you, but since I did, now I'm going to take advantage of it. One other thing that came up, and I actually mentioned this too. I think I can't remember who I've mentioned it to, but the questions that we use, since we're talking about process, there's one question in particular that's really old, and one of the judges actually commented on it. It's about the integration of the court system that happened over 20 years ago. And I think that question has just stayed on the survey because we've never talked about taking it off. And so I want to bring it up and talk about taking it off the survey since it's not relevant anymore. And we could maybe for the next 20 years replace it with a question about how the courts responded to COVID and their thoughts about that as a replacement question that might have the same kind of effect as that question did 20 years ago. So that would be my suggestion. And I see Eric popped up so that when we send out the surveys next time, we have a fresh question that's for the next round of judges.
Okay. That sounds good. Do we have any objections to that? Senator Nika.
That's a good idea. I did want to ask Eric, so with regard to Judge Waples and the no responses, I have to admit, looking through all of the sheets, there were no responses on, I've written this down here, on the assistant judges, the attorneys, or the non-attorneys. All the sheets that came to me were blank. And I wonder if you could at some point go back and check and see if just there was a computer glitch or were there really no responses, or whether they got fed in wrong. You know, I don't know. I wonder at some point if you could look at that and just let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. What were the ones that you noticed had no responses?
All of them. All of them, the assistant judges, the attorneys, and the non-attorneys. Those are the ones that looked at all those, and none of those had responses that we received. So whether there were some and they just didn't get fed into the system properly or what, I don't know. But that's, I think, what Judge Waples was referring to. She didn't see any responses.
Well, so Senator, I was referring to the questionnaire and responses sent after the 3-year prior to mention. That I did not see those, and I think Senator Hardy gave the reliable explanation to me that I was probably at that cusp where I just happened to have missed that. But there were attorney responses and non-attorney responses that I saw in my questionnaire.
So I received none of those, but I'm glad you did. Okay.
Do you mean, Senator Nitka, you didn't, when you opened up your electronic files, there was nothing in there?
That's right. The non-attorneys were there, the assistant judges, they were all there, but none of the things were filled out. Nothing was entered. So anyway, that's something we'll just have to take a look at.
The paper copies that I received had responses on.
I had them online.
Yes, right. I couldn't open them online. I asked for a paper copy. So.
Well, just something we need, just internal, we need to take a look at that.
Right.
And I guess, Eric, you've been involved in this all along, and I wonder if you had any comments for tonight.
Yeah.
Would be nice to have you weigh in.
Well, the one comment I think I had mentioned to the committee at one of our earlier meetings, which was the idea that to ensure the anonymity of the assistant judges, to going forward, to fold in the assistant judge surveys with the non-attorney surveys, or at least the court staff surveys, because otherwise, since there's only 2 assistant judges per county, and if a judge is only sat during the county during that 18-month period, it would be very easy for the person to know who was responding. I think, not that would, it just sort of, I think, makes people a little uncomfortable responding when the idea is to be able to give free anonymous responses. So that was one thought I had. And the other, and I'm glad that Judge Grierson is here, is then I think people might have noticed this in some of the responses. The chief superior judge is really a unique role. And in some ways, the standard questionnaire for trial judges doesn't seem like a great fit for the chief superior judge, perhaps in substance, and even to whom it is sent. There may be that. So those are the 2 thoughts I had that might be worth thinking about as to, and I would be, I think, helpful to get, Judge Grierson's or someone from the court's perspective about who those questionnaires should go to. Who is the universe of folks that might be very different than we ordinarily send to the trial judges, and maybe even thoughts about what would be a good question to ask, although I suppose that's kind of giving yourself advance notice, Judge. But
Thanks. Chair Troiano, what I could do, obviously this is the first time, as I mentioned in my earlier hearing, of my appearing in this capacity, but I could start with Judge Davenport, who served and went through this process. I could start with her to find out, what her thoughts are, and what, I don't think they did anything different, but I certainly would welcome the discussion with her as to what she thinks would be an appropriate vehicle.
I think that would be a good idea, Judge. Thank you. Just one thing, I see you, Senator Benning. Eric, I think that the notion to include side judges in court staff would be the most appropriate place to put them. And I agree with the notion that with only 2 side judges in each jurisdiction, that it would be a good idea, I think, to have their input a little bit more anonymous, since the surveys are anonymous. So I would suggest, if there are no objections, I would suggest that they be added into court staff.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, hearing none. Senator Benning.
Yeah, I was going to say, Eric, the conversation about what kind of questions to ask the court administrator's office, or the chief superior court judge, is really a question for us to try to wrestle with. And I was going to suggest we talk to Judge Davenport about that conversation, because knowing Judge Grierson, he'll just cherry pick the questions he wants to answer. And he'll let us know what those are. Beyond that, I'm going to agree with Senator Hardy that the question of court reorganization is definitely dated. But I'll chastise her for reminding me how old I am, because I was really involved in that conversation a long time ago. I was going to suggest, though, that we not narrow it to the question of COVID, but rather talk about things like e-filing, the Zoom conversation. Should that continue to be part and parcel of the judicial process moving forward? Because COVID is hopefully going to be done before this committee meets again. But those issues about how the court proceeds would be very helpful to have answers to questions to. That's all.
So I'm wondering if we should kind of discuss this or kick this around as a committee as to where we might come down on some questions, some changes in the questions in the survey. Everyone think that's a good idea? Yes.
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 I think while you're asking that, I think some of the questions with regard to the Supreme Court justices are also needing some review.
That would make sense also. Yes.
Bring all that up.
Yep.
And also, just to our earlier conversation, maybe making sure we have additional ways to publicize this hearing.
Well, we're going to take that up in just a minute when
Okay.
excuse the judges.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this was
Chip, can I just before I forget, Eric, I don't remember. We have got 3 magistrates here. Did we actually send survey requests to the Office of Child Support?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we include them. Yep.
Sorry. Thank you.
Good. Okay.
Yep.
So as suggested by Bob Paolini, this was productive in some way, a productive use of the first hour. So what I would do at this point is I would allow or ask the judges to go on their way and have their supper. I would ask if it's okay for the committee to stay a little bit longer to discuss some of the issues that we have spoken about that should be taken up well, we'll remain live, but take it up amongst the committee. So thank you, judges, for all coming in this evening. It was good to see you again, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Troiano. So I just want to make sure you're done with us for the night, and we're all scheduled to come back tomorrow, I believe, at 4:30.
Again, it's my understanding that everyone is not due back. Certainly that you're all welcome, but my recollection in the past is that the next meeting would be only with a judge that we called back to continue discussions about the initial interview.
Okay, and I just want to make sure if you've made that decision or if you're going to make it once we leave and then notify us who you want back for that discussion.
Well, since no one has to travel, I think that the latter would be my preference, that we would discuss it briefly here and send out notice, have Peggy send out notice to whatever judge that we or judge that we would like to speak with again.
All right.
Does that sound okay with everyone?
Certainly, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'll be glad to work with Eric on those questions for the Superior Judge.
Okay. Wait a minute. Thank you, Judge Grierson.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, so it's just us.
We're still live. I just make sure you guys know that.
Okay. Want to be live now when we have a.
Well,
I don't think we should be live if we're having a discussion, which is normally internal.
Okay. I mean, I was trying to remember if we went into executive session.
We have to move to go into executive session.
Okay, so we will. Okay,
Is that a move? Celine, did you make that motion to go into executive session?
Maybe I think there's a component where I have to say why. So perhaps Eric can help me make the motion, and then I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Yes, I think that's exactly right, Representative Coburn, that you have to give the grounds, and that a permissible grounds is to discuss matters related to personnel matters related to the retention of judges. I think that should cover you.
Great. So I move that we go into executive session to discuss personnel matters related to the retention of judges.
Good. Does that require a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded, okay, by Senator Benning. And all in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the ayes